Parents of Jordan Davis join me once again. This time they'll give us their reaction to the verdicts in the murder trial of Michael Dunn and their reaction to what one of the jurors has had to say about the case.
The verdict in the Michael Dunn murder trial is raising questions.
A jury delivered a verdict in the trial of Michael Dunn.
He's the man accused of killing a teenager.
17-year-old Jordan Davis. Dunn fired 10 rounds.
3 of those shots killed 17-year-old Jordan Davis.
Dunn says he shot Davis in self-defense.
He's showing me a gun and he's threatening me.
No gun was ever found.
No weapon, however, was ever found at the scene.
This was a mixed verdict.
Guilty on 4 of 5 charges against Dunn.
That's 3 counts of attempted murder.
And 1 count of firing into the vehicle.
Jurors failed to reach a unanimous verdict.
The jury was unable to come to a decision
on the charge of first-degree murder.
Retrying a case is something that we've all had to do.
State Attorney Angela Corey
said she would retry the case on the outstanding charge.
And will give it the same full attention.
He had no duty to retreat and had the right to stand his ground.
Florida stand your ground law.
Something that's become sort of a matter of confusion over this case.
Stand your ground.
Stand your ground, the principle,
is part of the standard self-defense jury instruction in Florida.
That principle is very much in the jury instructions.
It was a hung jury. They just couldn't reach a verdict on that top charge.
There's a lot of good kids out there. We raise them not to fear each other. We raise them to be good citizens in America.
Jordan's parents spoke out in an emotional press conference.
It wasn't allowed to be said in the courtroom that he was a good kid, but we'll say he was a good kid.
We will continue to stand. We will continue to wait for justice for Jordan.
We now know that the first time the jury voted on the charge of murder of Jordan Davis, they were almost unanimously in favor of a conviction. 10 jurors said guilty, 2 said not guilty. By the time their deliberations were complete, they were deadlocked on the murder charge, with then 9 saying guilty and 3 not guilty. The juror, identified only as Valerie, told ABC News she voted guilty.
Do you think Michael Dunn got away with murder?
At this point, I do, myself personally, yes.
Valerie says the jurors voting not guilty on the murder charge clung to the judge's instruction to the jury on self-defense, which included this: if Michael Dunn was not engaged in an unlawful activity and was attacked in any place where he had a right to be, he had no duty to retreat and had the right to stand his ground and meet force with force, including deadly force, if he reasonably believed that it was necessary to do so to prevent death or great bodily harm to himself. Valerie, the juror, explained how the jurors who voted not guilty on the murder charge of Jordan Davis were able to vote guilty on the attempted murder charges involving the other boys in the car. She explained that after Michael Dunn fired the first shots from inside his car, he then got out of his car, firing at the other car as that car was pulling away. And none of the jurors thought that firing at the car as it was driving away from Michael Dunn was justifiable.
We had a lot of discussion on him getting out of the car. The threat has now gone, and your intent is yet to still go ahead and pursue this vehicle.
So for you all, a dividing line was when he initially fired into the car, thinking that there was a weapon. That's one thing. But when the car pulled away and he kept shooting,
yes,
you all thought, everyone thought he crossed a line there.
Yes.
Joining me now, Jordan Davis's parents, Lucia McBath and Ron Davis, along with their lawyer, John Phillips. John and Lucia and Ron, we all sat here together at this table long before this trial, what seems like a long time ago, but it hasn't been that long, Lucia, since the very first time you learned of this news when Ron had to tell you what had happened. What are your feelings now in the aftermath of this verdict?
A little shocked, a little dismayed, even though I'm very happy that the charges have been, brought forth for Michael Dunn, for the boys. Justice has been served for them. Just a little dismayed that we have to continue to fight a longer fight than we expected to receive a just verdict for Jordan.
Ron, when you first heard the story and as the story developed, and even in the pretrial stages, I'm sure it was very, very hard for you to imagine what the defense was going to say. When you heard the man who shot and killed your son get on the witness stand and tell this story that you had, I'm sure, no ability to anticipate, what did it feel like in the courtroom as you were hearing this story unfold about your son threatening him and he believing, him seeing, believing that he saw, saying he saw your son with a gun aimed at him?
I was thinking about what Stand Your Ground was showing, that as far as the force, what force was used against Michael Dunn. He sat up there and told a story, but at the bottom of the story is you can meet force with force. But there was no force to him. Not a hair on his head was disturbed. So there was no force coming from Jordan. Verbally, it's not going to go through the window, it's not going to go through the glass. So he made up this story, and I could just see him changing the story bit by bit. The witness that heard him say, "You're not going to talk to me that way," when you say that, that doesn't mean you're afraid. It sounds like you want to do something to somebody else. So, and he kept changing the story. He's changed that story to say something else, that you're not going to kill me, you know, and he changed the story about 3 or 4 times. Even his girlfriend, who was there, she said, well, you know, he never said there was a weapon of any kind. Got back to the hotel. You're in a safe place in the hotel. Never said one time there was a weapon. Got in your car, drove the next day, 2.5 hours. When you're on the road, you speak about all kinds of things with your loved ones. Never said one word about a weapon, but all of a sudden when he gets to court, he makes up a weapon. So I think the jury has to see that and understand that you can't let someone get up there and lie on the stand and then start looking at a stand your ground and see a self-defense case, because when you impeach yourself, you can't keep saying it's self-defense.
John Phillips, given what we've heard from the juror Valerie so far, what we know about inside the jury room, is it your interpretation that those 3 who were not willing to vote for a conviction believed that Jordan Davis, the defendant was actually threatened by a gun, or that he just possibly believed he was threatened by a gun?
That's the standard. They believed through which he was impeached over and over and over again, but they gave the benefit of the doubt to the Caucasian businessman. And they, I guess in their mind's eye, some of these jurors said, yeah, maybe I could see a black.
How much of that doubt do you think, as a courtroom professional, was expanded as a result of that judge's instruction that I just read about stand your ground?
People don't understand stand your ground. And for that language to even be in the jury instruction confuses people and it inflames people. And so certainly that's the issue. And as Ron said, meet force with force. There was never even a car door's worth of force put on Michael Dunn or his vehicle.
The juror Valerie was asked what she might want to say to you, and this is what she said.
I would say I am sorry, of course. Nothing will bring back their son. I hope that they feel that we didn't do them a disservice.
Lucia, what's your reaction to that?
I really believe that they struggled. I believe it was a very, very difficult time for them. I believe that they put their heart and soul into really deciding what the truth was. The fact that they stayed there as many hours as they did is an indication that they looked at every angle. They listened to every story. They looked at every fact. But there again, the law is what clouded them being able to make the decision that they needed to make. But we do believe that they tried as best as they could to really make just decision for the boys and for Jordan.
Ron, Valerie says that it got very heated in that jury deliberation room. A lot of anger was exchanged, yelling, profanity. There was a real fight over this judgment about your son.
It's because you have mothers in the room, you have fathers in the room, and what happens is when you know in your heart that somebody did not have to do it, as Valerie said, it was something that you could have rolled up the window and keep it rolled up. You could have pulled into another parking spot. She named about 3 or 4 different ways that you, as Michael Dunn, could have avoided, you know, the confrontation, but he continued the confrontation with the children by rolling the window down yet again, and then bringing a gun to a verbal fight, you know. And so I understand what she's saying, and I just definitely want to let her know that I think she did all she could to preserve my son's legacy and to make sure that Michael Dunn was found guilty. And when you have a jury of 12, sometimes there's nothing else you can do but scream and holler from the rafters that, you know what, he killed a kid and he didn't have to. And that's what she's saying to us. And I agree with her. And my heart goes out to her because I know it's tearing her up. That's why she probably was the first one to come forward.
There are things that the jury did not know about Michael Dunn, including this phone call from prison. We're going to listen to this. I want to get your reactions to it after. But again, this is something that the jury never heard.
Right.
I know you're innocent, baby. I know you did something that you wish you hadn't had to do, but you did what you had to do. And so I know.
You know, I was thinking about that today. It's like, I'm the victim here. I was the one who was victimized. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Like, they attacked me. I'm the victim.
Right.
I'm the victor, but I was the victim, too.
He thinks he's the victor and the victim.
I think Michael Dunn has perceived ideas in his mind as to what really happened. I think his judgment is very clouded as to what really happened. And I think a lot of that kind of judgment is what enabled him to do what he did, because he feels justified.
Ron, you hear that? What's your reaction?
My reaction is Michael Dunn should understand that the victim was the one that had a bullet go through his lungs, a bullet tear his aorta. The victim is the one that was choking on his own blood and was gasping for air. The victim was a 17-year-old teenager that should have his whole life in front of him, that was seeing his life go away in seconds. And he probably was so fearful, and his friends were looking on, watching their best friend die in a moment of seconds. That's the victim.
I asked people on Twitter what they wanted to tell you or ask you. Kevin Ware said, please tell them that my heart aches for them, period. There are thousands of people tweeting that tonight. How does that make you feel? Does that help?
It does.
It does. You know, we have received so much support from all across the nation because we've taken a lot of time to make sure that people really knew who Jordan was. And I think that people understand that we've been good parents and we raised a good boy. Not a perfect child, but a good boy. And I think that people have been able to see the truth. And we're very, very humbled by the fact that we have so many people that are standing with us and supporting us that way.
Ron, Barry Schiller wrote, tell us something about Jordan that the trial didn't reveal, and what would you say to his murderer if you had the opportunity?
Something about Jordan is that Jordan was very competitive. He was a leader of his friends, you know, whatever. He had friends in Atlanta and also friends in Jacksonville. And whenever there's, well, you know, determine who's going to go to the mall, he was always a determining factor. Jordan was very competitive with me. He wanted to beat his dad in all sports and beat his dad in all games, PlayStation, whatever it was. He wanted to beat his dad, whether it be playing Risk on the computer or whatever. So if I sat and looked at World War II DVDs, he would sit with me and comment on World War II. And most kids that age wouldn't care about World War II, but because I cared about it, he cared about it. So that's what I have to say about Jordan. And if I was in front of Michael Dunn, I would say you have to understand, sir, that everybody that you tell to cut down their music is not going to do it. And if sometimes they don't do it, that doesn't mean you have to take their life. You know, I've heard since the trial that there's other people that you've asked to turn the music down, and you thought, and they did it. So then you were fine with that because they did it. But, you know, when my son doesn't do it, then you think that his life is so worthless that you would consider that an act that you have to fatally shoot him. And I think you should look at your surroundings right now and understand that that is not the way that we live in America.
Lucia, is there something you'd like to say to Michael Dunn?
Oh, I've thought many, many times before this, if I ever got the opportunity to speak to him, what would I say? And what I would say to him is that not only did you take Jordan's life, but you took my future. You know, I won't have grandchildren. I will never have a daughter-in-law. I will never have all of those things that you see in your children as your legacy. I don't have those things anymore. But what he'll need to understand is that in some way, shape, or form, he will pay. He will pay. Even if we don't ever receive the verdict for Jordan, he will pay because he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. And I feel sorry for him for that.
You know, for John and I, people who spent a lot of time in courtrooms, the way criminal lawyers score wins is, does the client walk out of the building? That's the win. And they score it in terms of sentence. The criminal lawyers themselves don't really care what the conviction comes in on. They score it in terms of sentence. And so Lucia makes the point, this is the rest of his life. He's being sentenced to a period over past his age of 100. Ron, what about that? What about that? How should we as a society define justice here, and how will you two define justice here?
Justice, for me, is we know that he's going away for quite a long time. If he gets out, he would be well over 100 years old. However, I want the law in the state of Florida to say to the nation, he was not justified in murdering my son. You know, and for me and Lucia, we just have to have that. Now, if we don't get it, we can live with that because he's still behind bars, you know. But to make the healing process start, we really need to have the justice system look at this and say, he was not just in killing Jordan Davis. How many young kids are going to have what we have, which is a lighted gas station, witnesses, 3 boys to testify? You know, all these things, all these facts were shown in the courtroom, and we still can't get a conviction that he did wrong. Most of the time, the kids may be by themselves driving, and they get shot. What's going to happen then when you don't have the witnesses? You don't have the light on the gas station. You don't have independent witnesses. You don't have a guy with no 911 call racing home to get away from what he did, you know, ordering pizza when he gets to the hotel. All these things should have swayed the jurors to understand that this guy actually killed my son and murdered my son, and they still couldn't come back with a conviction. So we're still waiting for justice for Jordan.
I have to tell you, the most common thread in all the comments about you today online, people knowing you were coming here, was just awe for your composure and grace in this situation. And I share that, and I can't thank you enough for joining.
Thank you so much for having us again.
We'll be right back.
Thank you.